shall feel the wrath of Hulkamania.
Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John, they're the ones to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
It is the BJ Show. This is the A block, which means we start a little bit after top of the hour. For those young people out there, top of the hour means like 7 o'clock. That's what it means, because you probably don't look at clocks anymore like us old-timers do. We do all sorts of interesting things with this show, but we started off with John Combest. Good morning, John Combest.
Good morning, Brad Hildebrand. TGIM to you.
Thank God it's Monday. That's a Sam Walton saying. Okay, what John does is for the past 23 years puts together this very incredible website. Not super sophisticated. Matter of fact, if you look at it, you go like, this sort of old-timey looking because it's done in web. What's the version again, John?
0.0.
Yes, but it's very efficient. Not a lot of stuff to keep you waiting around. You don't. Your computer doesn't have to load or anything like that. It just loads pretty damn quick because he's done it that way. He knows your time is valuable, so he's not going to have your computer sit there and churn through all this useless garbage that my websites have on it. His is going to be super quick and super fast. But what he does is on this show, we bring in this guy right here. Your name again, sir?
I'm Casey Kasem.
And we count down what John feels is the top 3 of all the stories that's on JohnCombest.com. And by the way, that's COMBEST, JohnCombest.com. And we start with?
In third place.
Last week we had a magical happenstance where a story in John's top 3 was the same as the story in Brad's top 3 in B block. And that story was about hemp. And Brad, you had a fantastic catchphrase when we talked about what hemp growers could use as a marketing line. Do you happen to recall your own catchphrase for hemp, Brad?
I don't. Remind me, okay?
It was not just rope, it's dope.
There you go. That's right. Not just rope, it's dope, right?
Yeah, in the context that particular day, we had talked about the fact, we've talked a lot over the last 19 glorious months together, Brad, about the cannabis industry and about that 11 billion page of words that were added to the Missouri Constitution. I'm only slightly exaggerating there because you and I talk a lot about the fact that a lot of confusing language is added to the Constitution. And last week we talked about how a group broadly representing the hemp industry came in and said, hey, let's scrap a lot of that language and put something in that's a little bit better, that's not so exclusionary, that also includes hemp. So you and I talked about that on the same day in A block and B block.
Right.
And in a timely manner, Brad, KTRS radio on Friday aired a piece from Eapen Thampy. You know, Eapen's one of the guys, probably, let's be honest, is the leader of the guy. He's the guy that's putting together the hemp initiative for the 2026 ballot. Eapen wasn't talking about that on KTRS. He was talking about the challenges in hemp production. And as it turns out, Brad, hemp in 2023, there were a modest number of acres planted in the state of Missouri. And then in 2024, that number dropped precipitously. And Eapen talked about some of the challenges in growing hemp here, Brad. And Eapen pointed out that it's not just as simple. Let's say you grow corn and soy in the Westplex or Franklin County or Warren County or wherever. It's not just as simple as picking up some hemp seed from your friendly ag dealer and planting it and then selling it for profit after harvest. Eapen laid out the challenges that are there in terms of genetics. You know, a lot of the early seeds that came over here post the 2028 Farm Bill, they were seeds that came from China and Canada and Eastern Europe. Those don't grow great here, Brad, in this climate zone. Eapen also laid out, you know, a lot of the confusion. What the heck is the difference between a hemp plant and a marijuana plant? Turns out not much except for THC. So anyway, it's a brief piece. It's about 2 minutes, and you can find a link today at johncombest.com.
Does Monsanto make a Roundup Ready hemp seed?
Absolutely not.
Really? Well, why? Or, excuse me, I should say bear. Why is that? Now, John, see. First off, can I say something? I'm going to say something out loud that because Eapen is your friend, right?
Correct. Yeah.
When he was on here, I had numerous people who commented on the fact that it sounded like he was high when he was on the air here. Would that be possible?
No, I don't think so. I think Eapen talks in a really deliberate manner. And I think that Eapen, unlike you and I, Brad, Eapen chooses his words carefully. He doesn't simply have a thought in his brain. And like Brad and John, he doesn't just ejaculate it all over the audience. Pardon the expression. Pause to that whole conversation. No, I think Eapen is just a thoughtful guy. And he happens to speak at a more slow pace than you or I would. Yeah, I don't think he's high 24/7, Brad.
Do you know, the other part of the thing that I find fascinating about this is that the champions of the constitutional amendment process, vis-a-vis, in this case, the marijuana folks, are now freaked out about the constitutional initiative process. You know what I'm saying? Because
yeah, and I think that, excuse me, I think that's indicative of a lot of us. Like, I love the initiative petition process when it's stuff that I want.
Right.
But when it's stuff that I don't like, I say, get all that out-of-state money out of here.
Right, exactly. They're going like, hold on a minute now. They're going to come in, because if refresh my memory again, they would come in, and this was the deal where the hemp industry would essentially say, hey, there's no need for these separate places. You should be able to sell marijuana at Walgreens and CVS and at gas stations. You know, if you can go and buy a fifth of Jack Daniels, why can't you go buy some gummies and an ounce of Maui Wowie or something like that, right?
Yeah, especially that Maui Wowie.
Do they still
make? I think the argument is you would treat these substances, whether it's hemp or cannabis, like you would treat anything under the auspices of alcohol and tobacco. And I'm going to pull a Brad Hildebrand and interrupt myself. Brad, you mentioned genetically modified cannabis or hemp. I thought of you this weekend, as I often do, Brad, in my 72 hours of missing you, or 48 hours, whatever it is, of missing you, because I was thinking about the fact that Monsanto developed and was prepared to commercialize a really popular plant, and it got killed at the last minute. And it would be something that when Brad Hildebrand traipses around the area, driving around, you would have seen in a perfect world that genetically modified plant all around the countryside, Brad. But you can't see it today because it got killed at the last minute. Maybe in B Block, we'll dedicate 90 seconds to it.
Honeysuckle?
It is not honeysuckle, but I did help perpetuate that just to annoy you, Brad.
John, I appreciate that. We ready for number 2?
We sure are.
Up a notch to number 2.
You know, in this special session, one of the chits, and because I speak kind of funny, I want to spell that out, CHITS, one of the chits that was used was the idea of, hey, maybe we can get some folks to vote for the KC Stadiums bill if we include property tax legislation in there. And then it turns out that property tax legislation was a little bit convoluted, and some counties were included and some were excluded. Well, Speaker John Patterson last week said that, hey, he might have a special session up his sleeve in September. You know, lawmakers come back in September for the annual veto session, because when Governor Kehoe vetoes stuff, which he hasn't yet, but when Governor Kehoe vetoes stuff, the legislature can come back and override those vetoes. Well, I was watching This Week in Missouri Politics, guest hosted by the great Jake Croson yesterday, and Jake mentioned that Speaker John Patterson said he just might bring lawmakers back to tackle property tax. Now, Brad, there's also a piece up today on my website from the Jefferson City News Tribune that tackles the same issue. So, Brad, as I understand it, the problem with this legislation is it says, for example, that property tax relief is not going to be coming to St. Charles County, but it could be coming to Warren County. It could be coming to Franklin County. It could be coming to a bunch of counties. So certain counties are a little less or a little more than when it comes to property tax possibilities for cuts. And there's a lot of folks that say that that's just straight up illegal, Brad. You can't put one class of people above another. So I guess the short of it is, when our lawmakers go to Jeff City in September to collect their per diem and raise money for their 2026 campaigns, they might also have a special session to talk about property taxes.
You know, the whole thing with property taxes, personal property and real estate taxes, there's a movement that essentially says you don't own your property, you just rent it from the state. which to a certain extent is sort of true. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's absolutely true, right? Boy, is that a cynical and accurate way to view it or what, Brad?
Well, when you think about it, it's right on the money because of the fact that if you buy it, if you write a check for your house and you live there, if you don't pay your taxes every 2 or 3 years, which depending upon the county you're in, guess what? You lose your piece of property. It's like if you don't pay your, it's almost like protection money. Hey, if you don't pay that protection money, we're going to come and foreclose on your house and give it to somebody else.
We're going to kneecap you. Tony's going to drive down from Daggett Avenue on the hill and kneecap you.
Right. Okay, we're ready for number one?
We sure are.
The number one.
Well, Brad, after we got off the air on Friday, Donald Trump waited until we were off the air to launch strikes against Iran and alleged nuclear, or as Brad Hildebrand would say, nuclear facilities in Iran. And as expected, Missouri's elected officials issued a bunch of statements. More accurately, their communication staff worked overtime, actually worked on a Friday and Saturday, and put out statements. But that's not what I'm going to want to draw attention to today, Brad. The top 2 links on my website at johncombest.com are protests in the St. Louis area against the war. I'll highlight the Fox 2 St. Louis piece because Fox 2 did a good job of pointing out who actually organized these protests. They were organized by the, quote, Party for Socialism and Liberation. And then the other co-organizer was the Eco-Socialist Green Party of Eastern Missouri. And they were assisted by the, quote, Voices for Palestine Network. So 2 groups that are proud socialists came out and said, hey, we do not need to be involved in any kind of foreign war. In fact, a lady from the Party for Socialism and Liberation, her name is Amisha Hulsman. She says, this is the time to be in the streets. We can't just stay at home and hope that Trump will change course and not launch war. We need a mass movement to show that the people are against this. So proud, avowed socialists taking it to the streets to stand up against the war, the unfair and probably illegal strikes against Iran. What do you think, Brad? Were you down protesting yesterday?
John, to be honest with you, I have very mixed emotions about this. If we do the Tony Colombo flip test, and let's say that Iran has a secret stealth bomber program, we'll call it the B-3 bomber, because ours are B-2s. They have a secret B-3 program, and they come over and they go and they bomb the St. Louis area. They actually bomb the airport and the north part of the airport where Boeing is. And their excuse on that is, hey, they're going to build this new 47, this new F-47 fighter. And this is a terrible thing. It's going to wreak havoc around the world. It's going to kill people. What do you build fighters for? You build fighters for to shoot down other stuff. And we done a preemptive strike. We don't want Boeing to build that F-47 in North St. Louis County. We would be, what's the term, apoplectic?
That was the exact word I was going to choose, Brad.
We would go. Those Iranians, they've violated our airspace. They've violated our independence. They've done things. And what did the United Nations do? They didn't do anything. I see. It's times like this. I think to myself, I don't know. I get it, but the problem is, reading over the weekend, there was an interesting article that talked about the fact that the Russians have already said to Iran, hey, you having trouble building nuclear warheads? We'll give you some. Get what I'm saying?
I get exactly what you're saying, Brad. And I don't mean to interrupt, but I think there's probably a lot of reasonable reasons to be cautious about this, right? The idea of, and we've seen it from both the far right and the far left, and maybe even the mainstream right and the mainstream left. Why are we fighting a war on behalf of Israel? And is it worth it?
John, I can solve the whole problem. I've said this to you.
Oh, yeah? Okay, how can you?
John,
now, does this have to do with bringing Cori Bush back?
No.
Oh, okay.
I've said this before, and every time I've talked to my friends, I think I have 3 of them now, in public, and I said to them, I can fix the whole Israeli thing. And they go, how are you going to do that? I go, we pick a part of the United States which is similar to Israel. It has to be. The only problem with Israel is if we know by the protesters, from the river to the sea, okay? On the eastern part of Israel, you have a river, and on the western part, you have the Mediterranean Sea. So this would have to be like someplace on the west coast. I mean, like, there's probably places in Oregon. You know, let's take a piece of Oregon, and we say, okay, this is New Israel, and we essentially give them, I don't know how many square miles. I don't know. Israel is relatively small when they compare it. I think they say it's like the size of New Hampshire. Does that sound right? It's not.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah.
Okay, so we give them that piece of the United States. We move them, and at our expense, we build them the Israel West, and we essentially say, okay, here you go. And then what we do is we give, when they all move out and they're gone, then we say to you Palestinians, hey, it's all yours, have fun, and we're out of here. And everybody goes to me like, that's the weirdest, stupidest thing I've ever heard. Because of the fact that and to me, what's so sad about this is, I talk about this all the time. And John, you know, when I talk about it, you know who comes to mind? You know who comes to mind when I talk about this? John, you know.
Are their initials KW? Or is it your dad? Or is it your dad's dad? Did you know he came across, and somebody came into work and said, there's a gentleman that wants to see you? Who is it, Brad? Who comes to mind?
If we can, and I'm not going to feed the audio down the line.
Oh, yeah, okay. Is this a PCP addict from 1991?
Okay, here he goes.
Here we go.
I just want to say, you know, can we all get along? Can we get along?
The famous Rodney King. Can't we all just get along? And I think the thing that to me is scary about this is, let's say Illinois decided that they don't want that the state of Illinois decrees that they will not be happy until all the Irish people in Missouri are dead. Okay? And we would go, what? How? That's the craziest thing I've ever heard of. But that's essentially all these countries in the Middle East. What is the Palestinians? And it's part of their constitution that they you know, the death to Israel. You know,
yeah, the eradication of that whole people.
Right. And Iran's the same way. And it's like I said before, religion is great, but it's got its flaws in the fact that you got these crazy nutbags that take their religion so seriously that they're the right ones and everybody else is wrong. The Muslims in Iran, the technocrats, the theocrats, the theocracy that is Iran is like, okay, we're the chosen religion, and those Jews, we have to obliterate them. We have to just eradicate them. We have to, what was the term that Trump, didn't he say he obliterated all the nuclear sites? Wasn't the term?
Yeah, I think obliterated.
I never understand it. To me, religion should pull people together. In so many ways, it pushes people apart. And there's going to come a day when we have the rapture and Jesus comes back and he says, you guys screwed everything up with your religions. You're supposed to love your brother, not kill him because he's a different religion. Get what I'm saying, John?
I do. And he'll probably come when you're eating ice cream in a Schnucks parking lot.
How do I know he wasn't one of the three? You see, that's the interesting thing.
None of those guys were wearing sandals. They were all wearing Air Jordans because suckers gave them money, and then they went and they bought liquor, and then they bought high-value athletic shoes.
I told you what my one friend said, that when she would give money with her kids, when she would give money to the guys who would panhandle, and women at times, but mostly it's men, panhandler, and the kids would go, Mommy, why did you give money to that guy? And her response was, it could be Jesus checking on me. You know, I thought was
yeah, absolutely. That's one delusional way to think about it, Beth.
Delusional. John,
you know, that's why I get all my advice from godsquad.cloud. If folks haven't been there in a while, you can hear music that's not only upbeat and joyous, but it's also inspires you to lead a prosperous life, Brad. And you know what? People ask, why isn't it godsquad.cloud or godsquad.co? It's godsquad.cloud. Excuse me. It's godsquad.cloud because, after all, isn't that where we all want to end up at?
John, you make fun of me well. Okay.
I'm not. I'm praising you, Brad. It's on hour 4 of godsquad.cloud. It's about praise.
It's prosperous and productive life. That's what God Squad gets you.
And that ad runs right after the dog doo-doo one for the fake Washington, Missouri dog doo-doo service.
That's a real service. I do that on the weekends, John. Okay, we have to take a break.